Good evening, everyone. Okay. All right. A nice hot evening, so hopefully we'll keep this nice and calm and collected. So I'm just going to, before I open the meeting fully, I just want to ask members or officers in physical attendance with an electronic device to mute it to avoid feedback. And if you are watching remotely, can you make sure you keep the camera and microphone off unless you wish to speak, and ideally not use the camera facility at all, as this can affect the quality of IT connection. Please note that the meeting will be recorded and data collected during the recording of the meeting will be retained in accordance with the Council's data retention policy. The recording of the meeting may be added to the Council's website. Members accessing the meeting remotely should use their Swale Borough Council or KCC laptop to participate virtually. If you join using the link on a website or on a mobile or tablet device, it is not possible to identify you and you will not be recorded as in remote attendance. Can members speak loudly and clearly into their microphones and to switch off their microphone after speaking, otherwise remote participants may not be able to hear the next speaker. So again, welcome to the Economy and Property meeting, including any visiting members attending remotely and members of the public. The following staff are in attendance: Director of Regeneration and Neighbourhoods, Emma Wiggins. I think she's online, isn't she? Oh, no, she's not coming. Sorry. So, Strategic Programmes and Assets Manager Kieran Mansfield, Interim Property Services Manager David Johnson, and Democratic Services Billy Attway. There's no planned fire drill this evening, and if the alarm sounds, those in attendance should leave via the exits indicated and assemble outside where directed. Do not use the lift, please. And is there anyone needing assistance this evening if that happens? I'll take that as a no. Can I ask for apologies, please?
Thank you, Chair. There's apologies for absence from Monique Bonney, who is substituted by Councillor Derek Carnell. Councillor Moore and Councillor Anne Kavanagh is running late on the bus.
Thank you. I now would like to ask members if they approve the minutes of the meeting held on the 12th of March 2024, minute numbers 753 to 760, and the minutes of the meeting held on the 15th of May 2024, minute numbers 21 to 22 as correct records. Agreed? Thank you. Are there any declarations of interest? No, thank you. That's great. So we move straight on to item 5, which is the extended membership of a Levelling Up Fund member working group.
Sorry, Chair, I will declare.
Oh,
I've got non-pecuniary interest. I'm the Council's representative to Sheppey Matters Board.
thank you. So I'd like the officer who's presenting this. Are you presenting this one? Yeah. Could Kieran, could you introduce me?
Evening, members. This is a report which essentially brings forward the recommendation from the Sheppey Area Committee around the extension of extending the membership of the Levelling Up Fund Project Member Working Group to introduce more representation from the island while staying politically balanced. So it's based on a report that went to a discussion at the Sheppey Area Committee, and the proposal is for two further representatives from an island ward, one from the Swale Independence Alliance and one from the Labour group to be nominated by the group leads.
Thank you, Kieran. Are there any questions from the members, please? Councillor Jays.
Thank you, Chair. So this was my proposal at the Area Committee. I wasn't planning to come sit on this committee at the time, but I do think we should perhaps go a step further now, and I think it should be only island members. I think this is something we're doing on the island for the island. It's called the Sheerness Revival, so I think we should have all Sheppey members on it. I know that won't be politically balanced, so that's impossible. I think we should have the chair of the Regen Committee still on it, and then a member from each group that can be representative from the island.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councillor Gibson.
Thank you, Chair. I have no strong views, particularly on this topic. My only question, I suppose, is if we're actually aiming for political balance, wouldn't an additional Conservative member also from the island be closer to actual balance? Because we're talking about 3 groups of between 10 and a dozen. It seems odd to have chosen 2 groups of that size and not the 3rd group of that size. Given there are a number of other Conservative members from the island, I think that would feel more politically balancy to me than this proposal. I'm also very comfortable with Councillor Jay's proposal. If it wants to be an island-only project, that's also fine by me. It is, after all, their project.
Thank you, Councillor Gibson. I think sometimes some of these working groups can get very large and very non-functional. So, anybody else want to speak? Does anybody going to want to put a... Councillor Wise.
Yeah, I mean, having obviously read the report and obviously with the understanding that it was come from a recommendation from the Sheppey Area Committee, I'm not particularly... I've enjoyed being part of the working group, and I'm not particularly precious about remaining on that. And I do appreciate where Councillor Jays is coming from, but I would... If that was the proposal, I do think it would warrant a bit further discussion, just to get a sense of where all of the groups are at on that, because obviously there is a representative from all the different parties for a reason, and so I'm more than happy to support the recommendation that is before us. If not, I would rather that it came back at another opportunity, so that all of the groups have had the opportunity to be consulted on that.
Thank you, Councillor Wiles. Councillor Jays.
Thank you, Chair. Having listened to that, perhaps it's wise we accept these recommendations tonight and then look at my proposal in future.
That's what I was actually going to suggest, because things move on, things evolve, and if we can get it just into place now, I think it'd be a good idea. If it's not working, then it comes back. Is anyone happy with that? Councillor Tucker?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. All I was going to say was no issue either way. I think what Councillor Jays has just said is, and what you've just agreed, seems the way forward. It's whether the actual island councillors actually want to be on it. That's the other thing I was going to suggest. So, thank you.
Thank you. I think that's why it needs more discussion. So if we look at just tonight's proposal tonight, and then it can move on in whichever direction at a later date, I think sounds sensible. Does everyone agree on that? Okay, so can I have a proposer and a seconder? Proposer, Councillor Derek Carnell and Ashley Wise. Councillor Ashley Wise. I'm having trouble with names tonight. I've known you all for years. Okay. And then can I ask you to, if you all agree the recommendation, please? That's unanimous. That's the recommendation's carried then. Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to item 6, consultation on disposals and community assets transfer policies. It's you again. Can I ask Kieran Mansfield to open and introduce the report?
Excuse me, members. This committee, or previous version of it, adopted the new property asset strategy back in November last year, and within that strategy there were a set of principles that were set out for both disposals and specifically community asset transfers, and those principles were presented as such because it was felt that there should be wider consultation about those new policies before we bring the final policy back to this committee. This report presents a document that's been drafted with the intention as the basis for that consultation. It sets out those principles and really poses a set of questions to the wider community groups, etc. The focus of the document is largely around community asset transfers on the basis that would be of the greater interest to the wider community. It essentially tries to also inform a bit as well, because community asset transfers about how they operate, how they function, what drives them. And the intention would be, subject to member approval, to go out to consultation for an 8-week period. The original intention was hopeful that we would seek to bring it back to the October committee, but the delay in this committee means that we would be seeking to bring back a final policy based on what we've had back through consultation to the January committee. Excuse me.
Thank you, Kieran. Are there any members wanting to ask questions? Councillor... Sorry, I can't read it.
I just wanted to check, on page 16, I assume before we publish this, we'll actually put the link in there so people can fill in the consultation.
Yes, Councillor Broad, yeah, that's all prepared. I should have said in my introduction as well, what we've also done is published the mapping layer, which shows the council's land ownerships, which is not something that we've previously published on the website, but we've decided to put it there with a link to try and stimulate people's thinking and input into the process.
Thank you. Who's next? Councillor Jays.
Thank you, Chair. I really like this consultation document, especially as it mentions consulting parish and town councils. I think this committee, at its last meeting, looked at memorial benches and beach huts, both issues that affect Minster. There was no consultation on the fact that the memorial benches were coming with Minster Parish Council, and I think that was a bad decision at the last committee. Beach huts, the final recommendation, never went to the Parish Council, which I think's a real shame. On community asset transfers or even disposal of property, the New Road Community Centre, at no point was the Parish Council consulted. Perhaps the Parish Council would like to take it on, as they were the ones that set the community centre up. So I think it is good that we want to consult. We should consult constantly with our residents and constantly with the parish and town councils that are affected by our decisions. So I think it's a shame that we haven't consulted in the past, and we're actually failing some of our own council policies by not consulting. But I look forward to this one, which says we will consult in the future.
Thank you, Councillor Jays. Councillor Kavanagh.
Thank you, Chair. Just a question, Kieran. There's something, I think, within it saying that if the community asset is transferred, if it doesn't work out, it can be brought back. What is the legal status? Do we still own the building? And if not, how could we take it back?
Typically, a community asset transfer is done under a long lease period. So in the event that it failed, it was usual for the asset, to return to the council.
Anybody else want to speak? Oh, Councillor Gibson.
Thank you, Chair. Only very briefly, I think, and kind of continuation of Councillor Jay's point. I think the kind of theme of subsidiarity and making decisions as close to residents as possible is pretty implicit throughout. So I wonder if it might be worth adding that in as a bullet point of the aims, because whilst when you read the whole document, it is fairly clear that that's what we're driving at, that we want things to be run as close to where they are as possible. But if we make it clear that that's an aim we're aiming for, then people are much more likely to buy into it. And I agree with Councillor Jay's welcome the wider consultation with parish councils and town councils. That can only be a good thing. Thank you.
Kieran, is that possible to just add that? Thank you. Yes, so then we'll add that to it. Okay. Anybody else? No? Okay. So have I got a proposer? Councillor, I'm going to get his name in a minute. Dawn Braun. And Councillor Tucker. Thank you. Sorry. Can I ask you now to, if you agree the recommendation? Okay, that's unanimous. Okay, the recommendation's carried. Thank you. Item 6 is consultation oh, hang on, no. Item 7 we're on now. UK Shared Prosperity Fund, capital allocations for town centres. And I think it's down to you again, Kieran, isn't it?
Thank you, Chair. This report, I'll start again, sorry. Back in January 2023, the report tries to set out a bit about the UK Shared Prosperity Fund, the background to it. The outline programme for delivery of the UK Shared Prosperity Fund was originally agreed by the previous version of this committee in January 2023, and as part of that, there was a need to come back to committee around a decision for the use of money that had been allocated within that programme, capital monies for use in the town centres. The appendix. Sorry, I'll start again. The position has evolved and changed over the life of this programme, and it's been somewhat challenging in terms of some of the slowness from government in terms of approvals and the like, and we've also had a reduction in staff resources, and it has meant that some of our original intent behind that programme hasn't been possible to do some of the necessary preparatory work for the capital schemes that were originally envisaged. So we have been in discussion with the UK Shared Prosperity Fund member working group about specifically around the town centre, these town centre capital allocations. They had asked for us to go away and look at what other districts had been doing in Kent as well. And we reviewed that, and within this we set out a set of recommendations which are based on the conversation that we've had with the member working group, and frankly looking at what the original allocations were, where we were at in terms of being able to deliver the project, and largely we found ourselves in a position where with the lack of preparatory work that we've been able to do, we couldn't proceed as we intended on most fronts. So it sets out some recommendations about projects that were the preference of the member working group, and they're largely based on deliverability and looking at what projects were already we're in a position where there is a good chance of them proceeding and spending the money as required by March 2025, which is an absolute cut-off date in terms of the funding. That kind of narrative is set out in the appendix to the main report, and it sets out for Faversham. It recommends the delivery of phase 2 of the wayfinding scheme, where design work has already been undertaken, phase 1 has been delivered, and therefore it seems a sensible progression to move that project forward over and above the alternative, which is the APNR system, which is encountered the technical issues. In Sittingbourne, without the backing of the preparatory work, the preferred option was for the Periwinkle Mill project, again where there has been a lot of background work that's been undertaken, and it is now in a position to be delivered, subject to the availability of funding. And on the Isle of Sheppey, whilst again it was a smaller pot of money specifically for this, although there was a much larger a pot of money for the island as a whole that was going into other projects in and around the town centre. Members looked at potential for improvements to Trinity Road Gardens, which would build on investment at Masters House and some investment that had been made there already to reduce antisocial behaviour through Safer Streets funding. So essentially improving the aesthetic of Trinity Place Gardens, and the possibility, if the funding allowed, of doing some feasibility work on the old library at 44 Trinity Road, which would look in much more detailed fashion at what could be done and at what cost, really as a preparatory move to the potential to secure future external funding to support bringing that building back into use.
Thank you, Kieran. Kieran, is there anybody who would like to speak on this? Okay, Councillor Gibson.
Thank you, Chair. Only very briefly, I think, not being an expert in any of the other towns, I think it's absolutely a sensible proposal for Faversham. The ANPR and the town centre pedestrianisation is a real minefield. So the Wayfinder, it seems a very sensible way forward. My question really was, in the other instances, the current position kind of details and the original options leads us to what we are now doing, and that's not the case for Periwinkle Mill and City. So I just kind of wondered where that idea has sprung from. It sounds a very sensible proposal, but it's not in the earlier part of the documents, if you see what I mean. So that would be great. Thank you.
Kieran, could you?
Understood. The project has been in development for some time. I think when the members discussed way back in 2023, well, previous to that, 2022-23, the sort of the wayfinding project, that included some discussion about whether that wayfinding should be about moving people between Sittingbourne and Milton Regis in terms of separate centres, but obviously there was historic interest in Milton Regis. And in a sense, Periwinkle Mill project, whilst it's not wayfinding, does provide a kind of a linking heritage destination for that sort of movement. So in a very loose way, it kind of, there is some association, but as I said, I think the decisions in part are driven by the absolute need to spend the money by March 25, and that project is ready to go, subject to the funding being available as well.
Yeah, and as a councillor quite passionate about heritage, it's quite a good project to get across the line, I think. Councillor Tucker. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I agree with the proposals and the working group's recommendations. I think it can't be put off to next meeting because we're going to run out of time, quite simply. I think it's split between 3 areas of Swale, again, which is good. I think it would tidy that area up in Trinity Road Park, as you said, Kieran, and the antisocial behaviour. Certainly looking into the old library, as we all know it, that would complete that area. And we know the issues that we spoke in detail about the old water tower and what an eyesore, and that just attracts antisocial behaviour. To get that finished as well, or sold, or whatever it needs to be. I know we don't own it, but or to make it good and not an abandoned building anymore, and that complete all that area. So I'm for all of these. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Tucker. Councillor Clark.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I can remember going back over 20 years ago as a member of the Sittingbourne Society when this was being discussed, and sort of minor works were being done then. And it was obviously the intention, should funding become available, to actually renovate the whole mill site and get it up as a working museum. My question basically is, looking at this proposal, which I quite happily support, with the funding that's going to be available, how much work can be done to the mill for the money that's available? I mean, obviously the money that's in the report here isn't going to, you know, put a nice fancy building up there. So is it just some sort of remedial covering, or what are we looking at, Kieran?
I will confess, Councillor Clark, I'm still downloading the documents from our heritage officer, so I haven't actually looked at the detail of the proposals, but it's been through quite a lot of iterations, I think, and it's improving the green space around the mill, as well as some improvements to the mill itself. He was describing it to me about 2 hours ago, and I think the funding, there were elements of the proposal that might have dropped off if this funding weren't available, things like interpretation, that sort of thing. But to be honest, I'm not in a position to fully answer your question at the moment. I say I'm still downloading the information from our departing conservation officer.
Sorry, through you, Chair, could you disseminate that information once you have it, please?
Absolutely, no problem at all.
Thanks, Kieran. That would be really useful. Yeah. And
sorry, members, there was something I should have said when I was doing my introduction. In terms of delivery of these capital projects, there is a second recommendation around delegating authority to Joanne Johnson as head of place. because we are working to a timetable. Any capital project comes with it some degree of uncertainty, albeit we're trying to minimise that. And it seeks delegated authority for Joanne to make adjustments and changes in consultation with the member working group as required to ensure full spend of the funding.
Right, thank you, Kieran. Yeah. And Councillor Wise, please.
Thank you, Chair. I don't really want to dwell on it too much, but on the Faversham pedestrianisation topic, just because I know that there are some people who have long-standing support for some sort of initiative to get that through. I just wanted so that we could have sort of on the record the reassurance that it had been explored to the full extent, that there could be some sort of technical workaround, and that wasn't possible because I think for some people it might just look like it's been junked when actually sort of all avenues had been explored, and I just sort of wanted to add just more generally that whilst I welcome the funding that we secured through UK Shared Prosperity Fund, it's a significant amount of money, and outside of just this bit, there's been all sorts of local small projects that have benefited from funding that we've been able to secure. So it's very welcome. But as we're sort of having to revisit some of these, it does underscore the issue with the approach taken by the last government to sort of have these beauty contests between different local authorities to bid for these pots of money, which would have their set timescales and their set criteria. And part of this is therefore councils aren't able to just simply scale up and scale down the workforce to deliver the projects. And so that is part of the reason why we're having to revisit this at the end of the day. Councils just need to be funded to do some of this stuff properly, and so that we can retain the staff with the skills, the expertise and the knowledge to be able to do this sort of stuff. So I support all of these alternative suggestions for the way to spend this money, and I think they'll be great each in their own in any case, but I also do hope that we are able to sooner rather than later reach a point where those initial ambitions as well that we want to deliver are deliverable, because there was a reason why we set out in the first place to do those, and they will have huge benefits for all of our towns, and I just hope that at some point we're able to get to a position where we're able to deliver those as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wise. Yeah, it's a shame that sometimes there was more work done on a lot of these projects that are put in front of us tonight, so that we would never have achieved that awful deadline with other projects that we're passionate about. So it's a real shame. I agree with what you say there, definitely. Councillor Thompson, please.
Yeah, I agree. The Faversham Wayfinders and Trinity Gardens I don't know much about. And then sound great projects, and I was just reading up quickly. But the Perryminkle Mill quite excites me, because we run a parallel project in Canterbury called the Abbots Mill Project, which is reinstating a water wheel and a centre for alternative energy. And I'm just really intrigued by that. I'd love to know more information, and it could be a really good signposting, especially with the issues with direct action being really sort of tramped on at the moment. I can envisage a much more interesting project there, highlighting to youngsters about sustainability, renewable energy, and how we used to use it. Is the stream still all running? Does anyone know?
Not sure.
Okay.
I can find out. That
Yeah, it's just I'd love some more info on it, but I think it'd be really interesting. And then happy to link up with our project in Canterbury. We've also got an engineer, and we're about to reinstate our power supply through the river. So we've gained all the permissions, the abstraction licenses. So yeah, I'd be really keen to get involved in that somehow, if that helps.
Yeah, I actually think it's a really exciting project.
Yeah, it sounds really good.
Mills,
Yeah.
You've seen or gunpowder works and things, heritage things for the kids now. They really do need to know where we're coming from. The barge projects and quite a few projects across town that are going on, across Swale that are going on.
But yeah, for me, it's a way of, for instance, we're getting stamped on for direct action. Look at Paul Watson and you know, Just Stop Oil. If we can showcase things locally that youngsters can understand how we can have a low carbon existence, of which hydro is brilliant. We've got all the links to how we can basically run a third of our energy through micro hydro with a decentralised grid system, and we can impart this through that project, which would be really good. So
that's really interesting.
if anyone's got any info, I'll jump on that one.
You're sharing.
Yeah,
sharing
thanks, Kieran.
Once
That'd
he's
be
actually downloaded from Simon.
Yeah.
So that's lovely. And I think I've got Councillor Kavanagh now.
Thank you, Chair. When I moved back to Sittingbourne 15 years ago, by chance I came across Periwinkle Mill, and it saddened me to see the condition it was in. I was born and brought up in Faversham, so as a child I used to go to the gunpowder mills in near Stonebridge Pond, and yeah, fascinated. At that time, ore hadn't been renovated. I think it's about time Sittingbourne had something a similar quality to what Faversham has had. It's a very sad little patch at the moment. It's so central to town in Sittingbourne. So yes, really excited, and really excited to hear the details that Simon was asking for. Thank you.
Yes, Councillor Kavanagh, I can envisage it being linked with the Raybell project and the Creek and Lloyd's Wharf and everything, so there really will be a connection. Okay, it's not wayfinding, but there's going to be a connection right across those areas, so that's really good. And Councillor Carnell, please.
Well, funny enough, I was there today, and it's in a terrible state. There's some residents don't even know what it is. It's really bad. I mean, we went there on a trip back 3 years ago to have a look at it, and it's just got worse. It's another thing we're letting go.
Well, hopefully we're not letting it go now.
Well, hopefully. But you know, 3 years ago they were going to do something, and here we are, and it's just as bad as it was. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Clark.
Yeah, just very briefly on that. I mean, it is, as Councillor Carnell says, a crying shame that the state has been in. I know at one point the Sittingbourne Society used to go down there on a fairly regular basis and cut back all the vegetation, and they did do some work on trying to stabilise the actual mill race itself. But unfortunately, you know, they're not a society with any big amounts of funding. And I believe, if I remember correctly, at some point they did apply for lottery funding, but they weren't successful at the time. So anything that can bring this mill back into, you know, some sort of heritage asset, I would highly welcome.
Agreed, Councillor. Councillor Thompson, you want to come back as well?
Yeah, it's only to point out that we got quite a lot of funding looking to the future. So with the idea of sustainability. So now I know about the project, happy to take on a load of info, and maybe we can reanalyse how the project runs and then look at future funding through sustainable bodies, because we got quite a lot of money, you know, tens to hundreds. So that could be useful for the project.
Thank you, Councillor. Is anybody else wanting to speak on this item? Okay. In that case, can I have a proposer, please? Councillor Thompson, and who was the fastest there? Councillor Kavanagh. Okay. Now I'll just ask members if they are happy to agree the recommendation. Okay, that's unanimous. Thank you. Item 8 is the forward decisions plan. Has anybody got any comments on that? Councillor Jays.
Thank you, Chair. I think January is a very long way off. I really would like to see the old library come to us in October, if not an extraordinary meeting before then. Sorry, before January. And the land rear of Guildhall. You know, I'd like to see things get moving a bit more. I know we said about the property disposal policy can't come back to the October meeting, but perhaps an extraordinary meeting in December to discuss these things. Just let's get some things done, let's get some things ticked off, and let's get things moving.
Thank you, Councillor James. But I think we just said on the last item, hopefully there's going to be some money available to start looking at the library and a way forward. So hopefully we are going to get that in progress as soon as possible. Anybody else like to speak on those? Okay, that's lovely. Got a lot on, actually, I think, compared to some committees. I think we've got quite a list. Okay, so item 10... Item 9, disposal of land on Fountain Street, Sittingbourne. Now, it has to be noted that there is a restricted appendix to this item, and if members would like to discuss the restricted appendix, then we need to go to confidential session. Does anyone want to discuss the document? Your blue document, blue paper? No? Am I the only one with a copy of it? Okay. Yeah, it's actually the valuation. Okay. So does anyone want to discuss that? If not, we will just carry on as and I'll get David Johnson to introduce the item for us.
Thank you, Chair. I don't propose to read the whole of my report, if that's okay, by your leave, Chair, but I'll give you a basic rundown of the property and our recommendations. So the council owns a property on the north side of Fountain Street. It's about 2,000 square feet in total, separated by an access road, which is unadopted. It's a former light industrial premises. Was identified in the Spirit of Sittingbourne Master Plan as a potential residential redevelopment site for the council's LATCO, Rainbow Homes Limited, Swale Rainbow Homes Limited, and the decision was made by Cabinet, I think back in 2022, to transfer this piece of land to Swale Rainbow Homes Limited for that purpose. Subsequently, Swale Rainbow Homes have decided that due to issues around viability, that they were not in a position to take the development forward. In the intervening period, obviously in full knowledge that it was going to be a development at some point, the council's assets team have tried to get short-term lets on the property. The buildings that were on site were coming to the end of their useful life, and actually between drafting this report and presenting to you now, the buildings have been demolished, so it's a cleared site. So you'll see from Appendix 2 our internal valuation, and the recommendations are that the land be declared surplus and placed on the open market, and then delegates to Head of Place in consultation with the Head of Mid-Kent Legal Services to effect a freehold disposal. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, David. Is anybody... Councillor Clark wanted to speak, sorry.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It is a shame that the Rainbow Homes can't take this on as a viable project. But my question is really, I was sort of looking at various ways to put this without mentioning figures. I did mention it to Councillor Bonney at our pre-briefing last Friday, I think it was, or whenever it was that we spoke on Teams. Would it be more viable, and would the asset be more valuable if we as an authority, before putting the property, the site to market, obtained outline planning permission?
David.
Thank you, Chair. The valuation that was undertaken was based on similar sites in the locality that have sold without planning consent, and I would suggest that if we were to get planning, we'd probably reduce the amount of money, or at least stay the same as we are at the moment. There's getting planning at the moment for residential developers. I'm sure you'll sit on planning committees is fairly tough, and I don't think it actually generates much. The fact that it's already been identified in a master plan as a residential development site and is on the Brownfield Register pretty much bakes it in that it's going to be a residential development site, so I don't think it really adds much for us to get planning. We probably wouldn't be able to get outline planning. It'd probably have to be full planning, and we probably wouldn't do that in a scheme that would be attractive to a private investor, so I would guess they'd probably still want to go for planning themselves. So long-winded answer to your question, that I don't believe it would add any value, no.
Thank you, David, that's really helpful. Councillor Kavanagh.
Thank you. I'm delighted that the buildings are finally flattened. I know of a 12-year-old who was being encouraged to go to the abandoned house. To me, the sooner it's disposed of, the better, because I think even without the buildings, kids are going to still try and go into the site, and that worries me. As a location, it's a bit of a weird one, surrounded by roads. It's not particularly attractive to me, but maybe a private developer would find it attractive. What I asked at the pre-meeting was, could the money raised not go into the Rainbow Homes pot? Just a question, that's all. Maybe to consider. Thank you.
Can you answer that one? Sorry, David.
I don't think that's a decision for this committee. I think that's probably, you know, full council policy and resources. But yeah, I mean, obviously that can be raised at that point to another committee, but that's not the decision for this committee.
Thank you for clarity. Councillor Gibson.
I was going to ask everything Councillor Clark asked, so I'm content with the answers. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Thompson.
I only wondered if it could hold a covenant for social and affordable housing rather than just being open market, as we're constantly battling that problem at the moment.
Thank you, Chair. I'm assuming that is exactly the reason why it wasn't viable for Rainbow Homes, because it was done on a purely social or affordable housing basis, or at least a large portion. So I think any covenant like that would significantly reduce the capital receipt, if not make it impossible to dispose of.
Thank you, Councillor Tucker.
Yeah, no-brainer, happy to propose.
Okay. And Councillor Jace to second, yeah? Or do you want to speak?
And to speak, yes. I think we don't dispose of any asset lightly, but I think, as I said, this is surplus to requirement. Rainbow Homes can't make use of it, what with inflation, building costs, and other exacerbating conditions. I think see this site used, it's an eyesore as you drive into Sittingbourne under the railway arch. I hope we can achieve a 25% uplift in the valuation. There you go, I haven't spoke about the valuation, I've spoke around it, but if not more. But yeah, happy to second.
Thank you, Councillor Jace. In that case, do the members agree on the proposal, on the recommendation? Thank you, councillors. Okay, so I think that's done, isn't it? Yep. So that's the end of the committee meeting. Thank you for bearing with me, but my foggy brain at the beginning, but I got in the swing of it in the end. So yeah, thank you for your patience, and have a lovely rest of the evening. We did really well there. The meeting closes at just